let's move on. Several interesting results in the Championship on Saturday, and as well as Watford sticking 6 past Bristol City. The one that caught the eye really was Wycombe Wanderers' comeback against Huddersfield. Going into that game, lots of previews that I read had written Wycombe off and said, they're down. There's no hope now. They are simply playing for pride. Well, they certainly did that. They played with an immense pride, and Gareth Ainsworth, the manager, was overjoyed at the end of the match. His post-match interview, definitely worth listening to if you haven't already. So proud of his team. They were 2-0 down, scored just before half-time, and completely turned the game on its head to win 3-2, giving their survival hopes a real boost. And Mike, Gareth Ainsworth, first and foremost, an absolutely fascinating character, isn't he?
Yeah, he's all about stories, and he's absolutely in his element at the moment because, he loves nothing more than an underdog story. And coming from 2-0 down away from home to win 3-2, when everybody's completely written you off, is like, that's right up his alley. This is the kind of material he loves to work with. We've spent a number of years with Wycombe winning promotions or challenging for promotions, and he's always trying to play down expectations because the damage that can be done emotionally to his players in terms of pressure and expectation from outside. And we've had so many years of him just saying 50 points is the only thing I'm thinking of. We just need to get to 50 points, and always batting away questions. And then as soon as there's an underdog story, he's there. We can do it. We can do it, no matter how impossible something seems. He's said many times before in his career, he really does believe in fairy tales. Ever since, that first season in management, he didn't have the start he wanted at Wycombe. Looked like they were down and out. The penultimate weekend of the season, lost to the nearest to them, Bristol Rovers, in what was seemed as a relegation decider, and they lost the home game. And he didn't stop believing for the final weekend that they could turn it around, and they did. And ever since then, any types of situations like this, he's all over it. He loves it.
And one of the main, I guess, attributes that Gareth Ainsworth has is just sheer work ethic, both something that he embodies and also something he demands of his players. He talked in an interview, I think it was in November actually last year, possibly with The Guardian, that he, instead of sometimes calling the groundsman, if there's a problem with the sprinklers, he'll just go and do it himself. He'll go and mend it himself. And, he's always on the go. He's juggling several things, including his own band, of course. But absolutely 100%, this is a man who throws himself into a job, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same flow state we just talked about with Brendan Rodgers. That once you set your mind on something, let's just get it done. Let's get it. Once you start something, you have to see it through to the very end and finish it. Exact same thing going on there with Ainsworth. And yeah, very much so. It's that drive and determination. He stops at nothing. And I think Wycombe is a club and it's a job that suits him in the sense that you literally do have to get your hands dirty and muck in with everything. And I think that kind of suits his personality because he's so infectious. It gives him an opportunity to literally connect with everyone in the club at various points. I do worry that Gareth Ainsworth, if a bigger club and he couldn't have a handle on everything and put that infectious kind of personality, touch people in the further afield within a giant of a football club, then, you might take something away from Ainsworth a little bit. But the size of the club that Wycombe is, he's just everywhere. He's all encompassing.
Yeah, because he has been linked with jobs, including the Sunderland job as well in the past. And you do just worry that if Gareth Ainsworth can't be the main man, if he can't smile, if he can't walk around with a big grin on his face, then he would just start to lose that special thing that he has. He clearly has a special bond with all the players as well. Several of those Wycombe players have been at the club for a number of years, and he's rarely been able to spend money. He has added a few players this season, but clearly we talked about transfers and how important they are with Brendan Rodgers, Mike. They're very important to Gareth Ainsworth because they have got to have the right character, haven't they, these players?
Yeah, absolutely. I think recruitment has probably been Ainsworth's biggest edge, and he's got, there's a lot of fantastic qualities that he's displayed throughout his time in this job. But I think the recruitment policy has probably been, it probably eclipses everything, and it's because he uses players' backstories basically. He likes an underdog story, as we say, and if a player's had something go wrong in the career or there's a reason why they need to kind of redeem themselves in some way, then, it's basically Wycombe are a club that cannot compete with other clubs. Even in League One, they couldn't compete with League One clubs on League One budgets. But you can undercut the value of what a League One player is. If you buy what was a Championship player who's now seen as probably League Two because something's gone wrong in their career, well, you could essentially go back and tap into what that Championship player was, get them at on a League Two salary, and bring them back up to being the level of a Championship player and bring the very best out of them and their attributes. And I think that's what he's done really, really well. He spoke about last season when they won promotion at Wembley. This is 25 players and 25 individual stories, and that is the core of his recruitment policy. Is find out what that story is, tap into that story, and just riff on it every week. Really tap into that story every week to motivate that player. But because he's got a bigger squad than what necessarily. It's not like they're down to the bare bones. They've got strength in depth a little bit more than you would expect a team on their budget. So he can rotate, and he's not burning these players out. He can tap into different players' stories at different times, and then rotate and bring in. And I think he manages it brilliantly the way he does it.
And does that then also help players with longevity as well? Because there are several players, like we said, been at the club for a number of years, several players who probably by this stage of their career as well, and I'm not just thinking Akinfenwa, but there are other players in that squad who, early to mid-30s, you realistically would probably expect them to be top end of League Two, somewhere like that, but they happen to be playing in the Championship, and they happen to be playing really well as well. Does that sort of constant belief in them from Gareth Ainsworth and the tapping into the stories help them just elongate that career?
Yeah, I think age will be a factor. I think if there's anything, if people take something for granted that, well, a 34-year-old player can't do it in the Championship, Ainsworth's that's like, Ainsworth can't help himself. He's like, no, why do you believe that? I'll show you that is not true. And these are the kind of storylines he plays on. He's always looking to confound the doubters in some way. And as soon as someone casts doubt on anything about any player, he sees motivation in what that throwaway remark was. And that's where I'm going to get that player to perform, is by playing on that. People saying you passed it. That's a big source of potential motivation for Ainsworth. So I've no doubt that that's part of the storyline that he's playing to these players. And careers that potentially never quite lived up to expectation, but this is the season that everybody will remember your last season in, at this level, or everybody will remember what you did at 34. They don't remember what you did at 26. So here's your moment. This is your moment in your career. And, this is the time and the place is right now. And I think, that's basically it. It can be, the source of the story can be anything, but age is one of those factors that just because people automatically assume at a certain age you can't do it anymore, it's like a red rag to a bull to Ainsworth. I'll prove you wrong.
And we talked in a previous podcast, you can go back and, of course, and listen to any of these, about Paul Warne and the techniques that he uses emotionally to get the best out of his players. You spoke about a really good pre-match technique in which he got everyone to write on a whiteboard who they were going out and performing for. Gareth Ainsworth, quite big on those sort of things as well. He talked about ahead of the Huddersfield game, they had a team bonding night the night before. He also talked about the speeches that he wrote as well ahead of the playoff semi-finals and indeed the final. Now, he did counteract that by saying it was, I'm no Churchill, but he did say that he wrote some speeches, and clearly they have the desired effect.
Yeah, well, I remember the playoff fan, I think it was Matt Bloomfield, said, players are going out with tears in their eyes, just before the game's even kicked off, was just so kind of moved by what he had to say. This is the way he can connect with players, in that, both managers today, this is really difficult to explain, is of all the mental processes that we talk about and use the Myers-Briggs model, introverted feeling is the one that is so hard to capture and articulate, because sometimes for the person themselves that use it as a driver in a flow state, they can't explain it themselves, what it is they tap into, and they need to use music and poetry and things like that, because some of the emotions that they feel and pass on to others cannot be expressed through words. It almost has to come through in an art form to get someone else to feel it. And I think this when it comes to team talks and match preparation, whether it's just putting on a video, a montage of your best clips or put to music or something like that. Gareth Ainsworth is very, very big on this kind of thing, because sometimes it's just so difficult for him to be able to articulate it all in words, to what he feels for a player. How do I make you feel what it is I feel for you if I don't put it in some kind of art form? We know he's artistic, and he plays in a band and all of these kind of things. So he's definitely got that side to him. And I think he uses it a lot in terms of how he goes about trying to motivate players.
Yeah, and it's certainly worked in recent weeks and recent months as well. Now, he's constantly saying, Mike, we're staying up. We'll do it. We'll survive. We're going to make history. Sometimes when you hear managers say those sort of things and their team is already adrift, you kind of go, nah, you're just saying that because you have to. But there's something about the way Ainsworth puts it across that you, and I can only imagine the players genuinely believe it.
Absolutely. And look, we'll just say about how to transmit a feeling to a player. I mean, we're saying exactly that now. When we listen to him on the radio, you believe him. You think if 99% of managers said what he was saying now, I just wouldn't buy it. You're just saying it. This is just some rigmarole you've got to go through, and you've got to keep up appearances. With Ainsworth, he transmits it to us. He makes us feel, no, this guy actually believes it. And the mad thing is, he talks about fairy tales and believing in fairy tales. Wycombe should never have stayed up in League Two all them years ago. They should never have got promoted last season. Nobody saw a pandemic coming. Ainsworth doesn't know how something's going to work and how Wycombe, we went into the pandemic, Wycombe were outside the playoffs. Okay, they got in points per game ratio. The run of form they were on at the time, I don't think anyone with a bet in mind would have been backing Wycombe to finish in the top six. Yet somehow, pandemic comes along, there they are, points per game ratio, they're in the top six, they turn up for 3 big cup finals, suddenly they're in the championship, and Ainsworth, I told you so. I told you I believed we could do it. I believe, and it's not necessarily, some people try to make sense of the how. Well, how can I see this happening? He doesn't concern himself with how something's going to happen. If you don't believe something is possible, then it's not going to happen. But once you believe it's possible with, almost every fibre of your being in the way that he does, then it is possible. It can only be possible if you go to them extremes of belief. And Ainsworth can go there and take players with him. Don't concern yourself with how it's going to happen. Just believe that it is. And if we're all bought in, we're all invested, it will happen for us. Don't worry about it. Just let the storyline write itself. And this is this level of drive and determination and motivation is like, you just don't see it in many places.
And one of the great things as well, apart from being a nice bloke as well, by all accounts, is that he really does not care what anyone thinks of the way he or his club go about their business. He's spoken before about living his life by, I think it's a Kurt Cobain quote saying, I'd rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I am not. And I guess that also is another thing, Mike, that just translates to the players as well. If your manager doesn't care what the perception of your team and your players are, the way they play and the way they set up, then you're going to go out there and go, it doesn't matter, does it? I'm not listening to the naysayers and the doubters.
Yeah, I think the key word is authenticity. He's so authentic. And I think one of the big things he does with players when he brings them into the building is he wants every player to make themselves vulnerable first. So whatever your biggest, insecurity is in your life, whatever it might be, whether it's to do with, you're scarred by something, open up to the rest of the dressing room, make yourself vulnerable. And then once you understand that you've got the backing of all your teammates and they're not going to use that as a stick to beat you with, that you've gone to that place and made yourself really vulnerable to share something, then the level of trust that comes from each other as teammates, you stand side by side with players who know your deepest, darkest secrets sometimes, and they still love you for it. And you've got a whole dressing room who've all tapped into this thing of feeling really vulnerable at some stage, and then being backed by your teammates, and then you go into battle with them every week, and that's the essence of what he taps into. Yeah, I think it's fantastic the way he manages to do that.
Well, we talked earlier about how you should never write Gareth Ainsworth and his team off. Well, every time I think about betting against them, I turn around and I go, nah, it's Gareth Ainsworth. I can't go against them. If you enjoy what you hear on this podcast and you listen to what we've said about Gareth Ainsworth and you'd like to know how profiling managers can help your betting, then Mike, there is a case study and a video to watch, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a link in the description to opt in, and it's just a free video, that basically explains how manager profiling can be used. And Gareth Ainsworth's a great example. Back in Wycombe's a great example. Back them yesterday away to Huddersfield. It's hard to see on the form, the form that they've been in, but because they just keep up and going again, these are the kind of storylines that you can tap into once you understand the manager's personality type. And, the fact that they can just keep getting up off the canvas in his style and that sense of motivation there, that anything's possible. So, yeah, there's all different ways and means to be able to apply a manager's style and from his personality and then understand when that team can be profitable, as opposed to looking at two teams and saying how strong they are relative to each other. You can pick and choose your battles and understand when's a good time to get with someone and when's not.